Whether you're shooting from a home observatory beneath dark skies, or just mounting a telescope on a tripod in a balcony in the city somewhere, we astrophotographers tend to worry about what's going on with our equipment during the night. A lot of things can go wrong after all. There are plenty of videos on YouTube of astrophotographers who've had equipment blown over by sudden and unexpected winds, and delicate precision equipment is not designed to be blown over. There's always some damage when those events happen. And there are plenty of other videos of astrophotographers who've lost equipment or at least had damage and lots of repair work to do if an unexpected rain came up. And of course, there are more ordinary things, such as the dreaded meridian flip, that can create problems. And there's always the possibility of simple but troublesome things, such as cable tangle-ups. Or, if you happen to be shooting from someplace like the Canadian backwoods, like I am, the possibility that some wildlife might decide to visit your observatory during the night. In my case, there is a very literal chance that a black bear could wander through, or a raccoon could decide to climb around things. I do have the Space Center. That's a little 1/8 of an acre where I have the observatory set up. It was a former horse corral, surrounded with a 9,000 volt electric fence to deter that wildlife, but it's still a possibility. So for these reasons and many others, it helps to keep an eye on things. And I know for myself, I often found myself waking up several times during the night to wander out from the cottage to the observatory just to check on things, to make sure everything was okay. And the observatory is about 100 meters from the cottage, so not that far, but it is through the pitch black night going over meadows, and I injured my leg pretty good last summer doing that when I discovered a new hole. So it's something I'm cautious of, and heck, even if I had built a concrete pathway from the cottage to the observatory, which I'm not going to do, I would still have to go out there several times during the night to check on things. So anyway, that inspired me to begin looking into security cameras. And at first I was thinking they were going to be expensive, but you know what? Security cameras have come a long way, and they don't cost nearly what they used to, and they are a heck of a lot easier to set up. So I thought it would be worth making a video on the security camera that I recently purchased for the observatory. Actually, I've bought several of them now. They just work so well. And I have them set up now in and around the observatory to keep an eye on things. And while I still get up several times during the night just to make sure there isn't a passing unexpected rain starting or some wildlife visiting the observatory, the nice thing is I can just do it from bed anymore. Because the nearest little village is almost an hour away, I do a lot of my shopping on Amazon. And if you pop over to Amazon and do a search for wireless outdoor security cameras, a lot of different makes and models will pop up. And they're not nearly as expensive as they used to be. I know I keep going over that, but the last time I looked at these things, they were a couple $100s per camera. I'm also a naturalist and spend a lot of time observing wildlife, and I frequently buy what are called trail cameras or hunting cameras to monitor the activities of wildlife in the woodlands around the homestead. And the ones I get do tend to cost about a couple $100 each. Occasionally they are destroyed by that wildlife. I literally had a black bear eat one of those cameras a long time ago. Here he is, contemplating the crime. And here he is, a second or two before he decided to make a meal out of the camera. I bet you've never seen a bear up that close and personal. That poor camera. It was only a week old. Just a rookie, fresh out of Camera Academy. Oh well, at least the SD card survived. But eventually the elements or wildlife destroy those cameras, and I get armored ones, so they are a couple $100 each, but the security cameras cost a lot less, happily. At least these days. So I settled on the Wyze camera. It had thousands of 5-star ratings. People seem to be very happy about them. They describe them as plug and play. Turn them on. If there's internet nearby, they will access the internet, and then you can access the camera. Some Wyze cameras, like other security cameras, are made for indoor use and some for outdoor use. This particular model is made for outdoor use. And its design reminds me very much of the old GoPro Cube, if you happen to remember those. I actually have one. I used it to film the eclipse. I've used it to do many underwater shots and shots in other tough and demanding locations. And it was very hardy. So hopefully the Wyze camera will be about as hardy. It does state that it is rated for outdoor use, and of course it's going to be outdoors all the time. And hopefully it'll last for many years. If it only lasts for 2 or 3 years, though, I still consider it money well spent. It was only $50, and when I have to replace it, they'll probably be even cheaper by then. The camera does not require much power. It gets its power through a micro USB connection, and I just plugged in an extra micro USB cord. I mean, who uses those things anymore? From the camera to the power supply in the observatory. Seconds after it went on, it connected to the internet expander in the observatory. There is an almost invisible button underneath the camera that you hold down for a few seconds and then it goes into setup mode. On my tablet, I downloaded the Wyze app and was presented with a QR code to image. I just presented the QR code to the Wyze camera, and within seconds, the Wyze camera was paired to my iPad. And that was it. That's as complicated as the setup is. And you compare the Wyze camera to any Android-operated device or any iPhone or iPad. As far as the physical setup goes, I had first intended to make something kind of fancy, build a little bracket to set the camera on in a corner of the observatory. And then I realized it had what looked at first to me to be a perplexing washer. I didn't understand why they would have included a washer with the camera. It was a big washer, about the size of, in Canada, what we call a toonie. I think in the USA it would be the equivalent in size of a silver dollar. If silver dollars are still made there, I don't know. And at the base of the Wyze camera, there is a very powerful magnet. It will connect really strongly to that washer. And the washer has a single hole drilled into it right in the middle so that you can screw it in place anywhere and then put the Wyze camera on it and turn the Wyze camera on it to face any direction that you want. Then you can move the camera's head up and down on its mount and get it facing whatever angle you need it to. So, with only a single screw necessary to get that washer-looking base into place, I simply mounted the camera into a corner of the observatory, the corner that I almost never go, and once mounted, angled the camera in a direction where it could observe the telescope from the upper part of the pier to the lower part of the telescope. That's the trouble zone, If there's going to be trouble, that's where it's going to happen. Now, I've literally never had cables hang up, but I have had the mount once get confused about the date and time it was operating on and violate conditions so that the telescope almost hit the pier. And using the camera, I can see if anything like that is happening. Plus, it faces the entrance to the observatory, so if there's an animal sniffing about there, I can see that. And I can also see the thermometer and hygrometer that I'm going to set up over the entrance pretty shortly. Now, the micro USB cable that you see in this image does not transfer any information to your PC. The cable is there simply to provide power to the camera, which means you don't have to use one of your computer's valuable USB ports connecting to the camera. All of us doing astrophotography, we know how valuable those USB ports are. Much of the hardware we use doesn't share USB ports well, so it's not like we can run things through a USB hub. That's where hardware starts getting unreliable. The Wyze camera moves all the information wirelessly, which is really, really nice. Now, I bet at this point you're asking, what's the image quality like? After all, that's the most important thing. Does it work? Does it work reliably? And does it work well? Well, I've only been using it for a couple months, so I can't tell you how it's going to be a year or two from now. Though I can tell you from long-term owner reviews, they're happy with it years later, so hopefully all goes well. But the image quality is great. When you activate the Wyze app, you have a choice of viewing whatever subject you're looking at in 360p or SD or HD format. HD is 1080p. To be honest, all the resolutions look fine, especially for my purposes. And the camera provides very good images both during the day and in the dark. Here, I'm using the camera to monitor the telescope as I move it into position to shoot the morning sky flats. It's 6:04 in the spring, so the sun is a bit over the horizon. It's actually, to the human eye, considerably darker outside though than what the camera portrays. The camera is really good at gathering light. And if you look up in the top right, you can see that right now I have the image quality only set for 360p. The green box around the image is the motion detector. The camera will detect any motion during the night. It is a security camera and it's designed in particular to let you know if any animals or human activity are nearby. I understand that you can set it up to give you motion detection warnings. I have not yet looked into that feature. That's actually intended for security against humans. For me, living where I live, human intruders probably are not much of an issue. There aren't a lot of humans on the ground around here. And to be honest, no animals have ever come through the electric fence. It is a very powerful electric fence. And there's actually 3 layers of electric fence. The former corral that is now the Space Center is surrounded by another meadow where I keep a horse, and there's an electric fence around that. And I also have some goats and they have their own meadow, so there's electric fence around that. And to this day, no coyotes or bears or any other animals that could create a problem, not even deer, have dared to cross that 9,000 volt electric fence. I think one little experience of it is enough for them. But the motion detector intrigues me, mainly because I have been looking for a way to set up an alarm system to let me know if there is any precipitation whatsoever. So one of the things I plan to do in the next few days, as soon as I can find some time, is go ahead and set up the motion detection alarm And one of these days when there's a rain, I'm going to set the camera outside of the observatory and see if the alarm goes off when rain begins to fall. If so, then I have a rain detection alarm. And that is something I think any and every astrophotographer would really appreciate. And if you're wondering how it performs in the dark, here you go. On the lower right, you can see the time is 22:14. And on the opposite side of the observatory, the door is open, and outside you can see it's pitch black. However, I've left the roof of the observatory on in order to block any possible ambient light entering the observatory. And in the pitch black, the camera's image is this good. And it really is this good. It's nice and bright all through the night. Even on the darkest, moonless, starless nights, it is bright, just like this. So, if you have been looking for an easy-to-set-up wireless security camera to keep an eye on your astrophotography system, I'd very much recommend the Wyze based on my personal experience. Easy as pie to set up, and it just works, and it works well. Now I have it set up here in an observatory and a permanent fixture, but you wouldn't have to do that. If you don't have an observatory set up, if you're just using a tripod outside, you could, for example, just place the Wyze camera on a tray or table and position it so your camera can view however much of your setup you feel is necessary. And for that matter, it would not be difficult to jury-rig a simple mount to put the camera on a tripod, which would make positioning easier. And that way, you can keep an eye on the wiring and the scope and make sure that everything is good to go through the night. It's a great way to keep an eye on things, and you can also set it to record whatever information it acquires. So if you feel it will be beneficial to you to later go back and take a look at things and see how things were working, you can have video footage archived and ready to view. Honestly, I sure wish I'd thought to get one of these long ago. Being able to monitor the movement of the mountain telescope through the night is great, and the Wyze camera makes it so easy. It's an incredible labor-saving and very practical addition to any astrophotography setup, I feel. As always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or thoughts, leave them in the comments section below. And please take a moment to like and subscribe. Now have fun doing astrophotography and get out there and shoot the sky.